5, 4, 3, 2.
Hi everyone, welcome to the launch of the IEA's Energy Efficiency Indicators online training for South Africa. I'm Hugo Salamanca. I work here at the IEA as an energy efficiency analyst. And while we wait for our colleagues to join, I'll be presenting the content of today's webinar. Next slide, please. So the purpose of today's workshop is to really encourage our colleagues across the South Africa partners and of course the region to enroll in the 2 courses that we have developed here at the IEA on energy efficiency indicators. They are key in our progress for energy efficiency and we'll be presenting them today. Also giving some introduction to the indicators and data, what we can do with it, presenting some key work that has been done in South Africa, and we'll have a panel discussion to share different perspectives. Again, this is really to encourage you to take this online course. It's free, it's available, and gathers the available and best practices that the IEA recommends. Next slide, please. So the agenda today is quite packed. As you can see, we'll start with introductory remark from both Mr. Kolili Mabusela, Director Energy Efficiency of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, South Africa, and from Melanie Slade, E4 Senior Program Manager here at the IEA. My colleague from the data center, Victor Tapia Garcia, will then present on the importance of energy efficiency and how we manage it at the IEA. Our colleagues from DMRE and SANERI will then present key work done in South Africa at the moment on energy efficiency. We'll also touch on additional benefits from energy efficiency. And finally, touching on regional perspectives. Then we'll have the panel discussions as mentioned. Finally, my colleague Mathieu will present how the rollout works, how you can register, what's the content, the length, and how you can go about this training. Next slide, please. We highly encourage you to make any questions. We'll try to attend them if we have time in the chat function. For the panelists during the panel, please do raise the hand or physical hand or Zoom hand to mention. But my colleague, Melanie Slade, will be moderating the panel, so you can either make a sign to her if you're able, or just raise the hand through Zoom. While we wait for a couple more minutes for people to join, and then we'll start with the introductory remarks. Maybe next slide, please, Paola. I think we can start now. Hopefully everybody has joined. And if I may kindly request Mr. Mabusela to make some introductory remark to this launch of the indicators course for South Africa. Mr. Mabusela, over to you. You are on mute, maybe. Or yes. I don't know if you're facing connection issues, Mr. Mabusela. Otherwise, we might go for Melanie, if that's okay with you, while Kolili tries to join again, or maybe reconnect.
Dear Hugo, have IT said that we have a problem. If you can just wait for me 5 minutes, I will let you when to start. I think that we're still in private mode, so if we wait, we are not quite sure what is happening. Just 1 second, please.
I can start the webinar if you want. The joys of events.
Okay, we are ready.
Okay, can we come back to the beginning, then I'll be faster this time. So hi everyone, welcome to the launch of the IEA's Energy Efficiency Indicators online training course, and sorry for the delay. We'll be going a bit faster on the introductory slides. Next slide, please. So I'm Hugo Salamanca from the Energy Efficiency Division, and today this webinar is organized with our colleagues from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy and the South African National Energy Development Institute. We'll be covering the two main courses today, energy efficiency indicators, both for fundamental statistics and policy making. And we'll be providing key highlights from the work that we do here at the IEA, the work that is being currently undergoing in South Africa, the just transition, regional perspectives, and finally a panel discussion. Next slide, please. So that's the agenda for today. We'll be starting with welcoming remarks from Mr. Kolili Mabusela, the Director of Energy Efficiency in the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, South Africa, from Ms. Melanie Slade, the Senior Program Manager of the E4 program, Energy Efficiency in Emerging Economies, here at the IEA. Next slide, please. If you please, I will encourage you to make any questions through the chat function. I will try to attend to them if we have time. So we're running a bit late already. And during the panel discussion, please raise your hand or the physical hand or the Zoom hand to speak. But Melanie Slade will be giving you opportunities to speak. Next slide, please. Maybe now I can hand it over to Mr. Mabusela for introductory remark. Over to you, Mr. Mabusela, if this time it works. You might be on mute this time, yes. Mr. Mabusela, you're on mute if this works. Apologies, bear with us, we are facing some technical issues. While we resolve this, maybe, Melanie, I can ask you to step in while Kolili tries to connect.
Sure, thank you, Hugo. And thank you everybody for joining us this morning. This event is an important part of the collaboration between the IEA and the Government of South Africa, particularly the Department of Minerals and Energy. And we find it very important over the last sort of 6 years we've been working together to have a focus on data so that we can produce a really effective evidence base for South Africa's energy efficiency policy. And of course, this is particularly important in the context of rolling out the National Energy Efficiency Strategy and making sure energy efficiency policy is prioritised so that we can collectively work towards the targets that South Africa has set for energy efficiency across all sectors. So, you know, to do that well, we need a good data set that helps provide evidence. It helps us prioritise which policies to put in place first, track whether they're working, and also overall track the target progress. So that's why this is so important to us. As Hugo says, we have these two online courses that we have developed to create a community of practice on energy efficiency indicator development. And we're going to be talking about those today. But the idea is to try and get people who collect data, people who have the need to analyze data, you know, working together as a community using the same sort of methodologies. And then following this event, we'll do more sector-specific workshops so that we can kind of dig into some details. So thanks once again, and with that, I'll hand back to Hugo.
Thank you very much, Melanie. We'll try once more, Mr. Mabusela. I don't know if you're able to hear us. And oh, yes, please, over to you.
Yes, sorry, Hugo. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Kolili Mabusela. I work for the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. I had a little bit of a challenge on the phone that I'm using. Yes, I think we are happy from the DMRA and SANED to have this collaboration with IEA. Today we're launching, as Melanie has already indicated, we're launching the online workshop or training on energy efficiency indicators in South Africa. I think you will recall, colleagues, that I think in 2016, 2015, we established an energy efficiency strategy. We call it the post-2015ness. And in the same year, we also have an energy efficiency target monitoring system that we have. Both the energy efficiency strategy and the ETMS require some data and also require some indicators. One of the things that we are doing now, I think you'll also recall that we try to have a mandatory provision of energy data or the regulations in terms of that. We couldn't complete that process. We're in the process of completing that now so that we can actually get what we call the end use energy data, as well as some energy management planning. So this particular discussion will actually help us to formulate this type of discussion. What elements are the strategy lacking? What are the ETMS? What are the data requirements? As well as what are the indicators that we might actually have to use in South Africa. Thanks, Hugo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mabusela, for setting the framework and the overall project and work that we have been developing. Without further ado, I will hand it over to my colleague, Victor Tapia Garcia. Next slide, please. For the presentation of the work that the IEA does on data in this program that we have, the rollout of the indicators online course. Over to you, Victor.
Thank you very much, Hugo. Hi, as Hugo was mentioning, my name is Victor and I work in the Energy Efficiency Indicators team within the IEA Energy Data Center. And my main task is to collect end-use data from IEA member countries, as well as non-members, and develop related energy efficiency indicators. And for today's presentation, I would like to make the case of why we need good data for good policies, specifically looking at efficiency indicators. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I think that all of us attending this webinar agree on the importance of energy efficiency and its multiple benefits, ranging from improving environmental quality, lower energy bills, creation of jobs, etc. We also see little by little that energy efficiency is becoming more visible in the political agendas, despite there is still a large untapped potential to be met, but little by little it's gaining attention. However, one of the key messages that I would like to bring here today is that data is really important if we want to design the right policies and if we want to track the energy efficiency progress. We really need this to be an evidence-based process based on solid data collection processes and on detailed data that it's also adequate to the policies that we are analyzing. Next, please. So we know that most countries are setting energy intensity targets, and we see in fact that most regions across the globe are decreasing their energy intensities over time. However, we cannot tell for sure if those decreasing trends are because of the effects of the energy efficiency or if there are other factors into play, like the structural changes or the activity changes. So in order to better understand the roles of energy efficiency, we need more detailed data. We need end-use data. Next. And why do we need this end-use data? Energy end-use data is important to better understand the patterns of energy consumption. So the demand side patterns, as well as identifying priority areas for policy. So here, for example, we can see the shares of South Africa for total final consumption. In this case, we can quickly identify that road transport is responsible for a quarter of the energy consumption. So it's likely that we consider the road transport a priority sector for energy savings. However, we don't know if this consumption is coming mostly from passenger cars, trucks, buses, motorbikes, how long those vehicles are traveling. So we need more detailed data to better assess this. And not having this proper data could lead to wrong policy decisions and actions. So next, please. So I would say that subsectoral and end-use data are really at the boundary or breaching economy-wide targets, like, for example, decreasing the energy intensity we were mentioning before, and the specific policies that we design to meet those targets. Next. I would also like to take this opportunity to shortly introduce the work we do here at the IEA, the IEA's approach on end-use data and energy efficiency indicators. And next, this is a work stream that was approved in an IEA ministerial in 2009, and it started as an IEA members country effort, but we are glad to say that now we have expanded beyond membership. And increasingly, countries are recognizing the value of this work stream, and they are also collaborating with us more closely to identify the methodologies to develop indicators at the national level. So this work stream is grounded on an energy efficiency indicators questionnaire, which was designed together with several international experts. And this is a user-friendly Excel questionnaire, and it's also available online for free. And it collects energy and use data as well as activity data. So then we can develop the indicators. It covers the main 4 final consumption sectors: residential, services, industry, and transport. And the results of this data collection are shared more broadly twice a year in June and December, and in the form of a database and also a report that is also available online for free. Sorry, I cannot see the, okay. So here we can see the, in fact, we released the last edition of the database last week, where we included 44 countries. And we encourage you to have a look at the website. And of course, the IEA is very keen to continue collaborating with South Africa on end-use data and indicators. This is something we've started with you already, and we hopefully we would like to include the outcome of this work, hopefully in the next editions of the database. And also in our latest release of the database, we've included a new visual tool with interactive ready-made charts. And the charts can be built for each country, as well as the possibility to compare different countries for selected variables. So here we can see for, next slide, please. This is not the same presentation. Okay, so please remain here. So just to give a flavor on this slide of the type of indicators that we develop and the methodologies behind, I bring here the example of the residential sector. And the indicators that we develop are all based on the ratio between end-use data and activity data. So for each sector, we try to consider the most representative end uses, like in this case, we can see space heating and cooling, water heating, cooking, lighting, and then energy consumption by appliance. And regarding the activity data, it should have the same boundaries as the energy data. So for example, for the residential sector, we consider population, number of occupied dwellings, residential floor area, and appliance stock and diffusion. Next slide, please. So here is, sorry for the confusion. So here what we can see is an example of the database, the visual tool I was talking about. And here we can see the comparison of different intensities like transport, services, residential across different countries. And we encourage you to have a look at this at the website. And of course, we hope to include South Africa very soon. Next slide, please. And all of those methodologies I've been talking about are detailed into those 2 manuals. The first one is the fundamentals in statistics. It's more focused on how to collect the data and develop the indicators. And the second one, the essential for policymakers, is more oriented to how to interpret those energy efficiency indicators. And both manuals are available on the IEA website for free in PDF format. And this is really important to highlight that all the indicators that we develop are based on international guidelines, so that in the end, we have robust data and robust indicators that can be compared across countries. Next. And the good news, and part of the reasons we are here today, is because those manuals have evolved over time, and the content of those have been moved into interactive online courses. And those courses are user-friendly. They allow the user to go into their own pace and design to reach a broader audience and create more capacity. So we really think that this is a great tool to get familiar with those methodologies and start working on this area. Next, please. So just to conclude, some final remarks is that data and indicators, specifically detailed end use data and indicators, are really key to track energy efficiency progress across sectors and across end users. And once again emphasize that indicators development require some methodologies. And we hope that those online courses could help you get familiar with those. And of course, from the IEA, we remain available to facilitate national work and to provide methodological support and continue collaborating with you. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Victor, for this very interesting maybe taste of what the online courses have. I would also like to emphasize what Victor has mentioned, that most of the resources that the IEA has is public, and we do encourage you to use it. This is made really to support our countries and all the energy experts and professionals to really engage in the just transition and energy transition. And this is key. Data will be the masterpiece, the element that will allow us to track progress and of course to set the adequate targets and to value the many benefits of energy efficiency. On that, I will now like to hand it over to my colleagues, Barry Brennenkamp, General Manager on Energy Efficiency and Corporate Communications at Sanedi, and Teslim Yusuf, Project Manager on Data and Knowledge Management Program. Dear colleagues, if you want to share the screen, I will hand it over to you now. Or I can do it if you're facing any issues. Let me know.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues at the IEA. I just want to check if you can see my screen.
Yes, but on we see the presenter mode. Yes, perfect. That's perfect. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much. And once again, good morning. My name is Barry Brennenkamp. I'm from the South African National Energy Development Institute. We are an agency of the South African Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And as introduced by Hugo, we are jointly working with the IEA under the leadership of our Department of Mineral Resources and Energy in a number of areas. And I was just asked to do a quick presentation on what we're doing in energy performance certificates in buildings in South Africa now, which has been in the pipeline for many years, but has come to fruition in December last year. On the 8th of December, our Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy promulgated the regulations for energy performance inside certain categories of buildings in South Africa, 4 classes of buildings. And this is a very exciting area, although it comes at a difficult time with the COVID situation where people are transitioning to working from home. So just as a way of introduction for all of us, Sanedi has 2 primary functions as an agency of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. The one is to direct, monitor, and conduct energy research and development, and that's the one leg of Sanedi, and then the other leg is to undertake measures to promote energy efficiency throughout the economy. So we have 2 distinct programs, one on the research and development and then one on energy efficiency, and I am involved on the energy efficiency side. So Mr. Mabasela referred to the National Energy Efficiency Strategy, the post-2015 strategy, which has certain targets set to be achieved by the year 2030. Is the planning period in which these targets are set. And this is just an extract out of the post-2015 National Energy Efficiency Strategy, NEES, that Mr. Mabasela referred to. So we have targets in all the various sectors of reduction in energy. I've just highlighted in red the two that are applicable to the energy performance certificates that we're talking about. And the target for public buildings is 50% achievement based on the 2015 baseline, and in the commercial sector or the private sector, 37%. You'll see some of the actions that were identified that would help us to achieve those targets is through improvements in building standards, the Department of Public Works and Innovation, their policies, and they have a green building policy. Energy performance certificates were clearly highlighted as one of those vehicles in which to achieve those targets, as well as in commercial or private sector property. So why energy performance certificates at this stage? As I said, this was in the pipeline since 2015. A lot of work had to be done, a lot of development work had to be done, a lot of cross-references to different legislation. So it was a tedious process, and bearing in mind when this was developed, no one could foresee what the impacts would be of COVID. So it came to fruition in December 2020. And depending on the audience you're talking to, so if I was talking to building owners, or if I was talking to the chief accounting officer in a private sector building or public sector building, then my focus would be that energy efficiency and energy performance certificates are there to promote energy transparency. So it is the visualization of your building. So what we receive our energy bills every month, but it's got a lot of technical jargon. It's got kilowatt hours, and it's got reactive energy, kilovars and kilowatt hours, and maximum demand, and so on. Finance people would see the rands and cents and they would pay that. They wouldn't really understand all the jargon on a typical electricity bill or energy bill. Energy performance certificate is a visualization of your exact situation. Are you a good building or you're a bad building? And it makes it very easy for the general public to understand how that building is performing. When I'm talking to an audience like this today, and I'm talking to the converted, then we'll talk more about the data behind that visualization, which is a lot more complicated than just a certificate that says A to G on where your building is. So it depends on the audience you're talking to. But one of the key things there is to establish a register in South African database of information on the energy performance of buildings, which then can be helped to support policy development in government. And I'm glad our colleagues referred to policy development using good data to do good policy development. And this feedback mechanism will then feed into building regulations and various other data, including the update of the National Energy Efficiency Strategy. In South Africa, the existing building stock was responsible for approximately 33% of carbon emissions, and it definitely had to be addressed as a priority sector. But the EPCs is also a very good way to benchmark energy performance of building against industry benchmarks, against national norms, or against buildings in the same, let's say, customer category that they could see how they're performing against each other. So competitive involvement there between different building owners and property developers. Why, you might also say, is if you look at typically in South Africa, the energy cost in the building makes up around about 35% of the cost. Maintenance costs 25%, and then you have other areas like cleaning and security and so on. The energy costs and maintenance costs over the life cycle of a building, and many buildings obviously are stand for longer than 30 years. We've got many examples of buildings of over 100 years, but in terms of the planning phase and looking at the life cycle, we look at 30 years typically as the life cycle costing of a building. And if you look at the planning and construction, that makes up about 20% of the cost. But as you move over time, that maintenance cost, because technologies become older and obsolete and aren't maintained, the combined energy and maintenance costs over time could make up as much as 80% of the building's cost over a period of time towards the end of its life cycle of 30 years, unless we do something about it. And EPCs has this mechanism to state where you are in terms of your energy consumption, identify where you can improve, and continuously improve that and update with the technology. I won't go through this in too much detail, but in South Africa, the Energy Performance Certificate process, the application process might look complicated here, but it's not. The customer in the categories that are eligible has to make the application. He has to use an accredited or a professional body that has been accredited by the South African accreditation system. SANAS is the South African National Accreditation System, who goes through a process of accrediting certain bodies to be able to do this work, to ensure that they have technical competence, they have necessary requirements, they have the necessary equipment to do this work that has been calibrated and so on. And the SANAS accredited body has to make sure that the work is done in accordance with the South African standard, which is SANS, South African National Standard 1544. And you can see the standard was originally drafted in 2014 and needs some updating. The SANAS accredited body will then do the assessment. They'll do everything that needs to be done. They'll populate the National Energy Building Register. They will issue the certificate themselves. The certificate will go to the customer, and the customer will then liaise with SANEDI thereafter and supply a verified copy of the certificate. The DMRE, then in terms of the legislation, can appoint and commission random spot checks, compliance audits to make sure that the work has been done in accordance with the standard and the regulation. And they can do that at any time. And typically you do that every year and do quality and compliance audits. And then in a 5-year period, SANEDI starts sending reminders after the first 3 years that the 5-year period is coming to an end and the certificate needs to be renewed. Because in South Africa, the EPC is valid for 5 years. So issuing the EPC, I've spoken about it, I won't go into detail. It has to be done by a competent, accredited, independent third-party person through our accreditation agency. The applicable standard has to be assessed by this body and has to be accredited by submitted and then submitted to SANEDI together with the EPC. This is not the final data input sheet, but this is typically the type of data we need for EPCs. We need to know the occupancy class. We need to know we have 6 climatic zones in South Africa. We're very large geographically. We have warm, humid areas on the East Coast. We have very cool, moderate temperatures in the Southern Coast and in the Cape area. We have different dry temperatures in the inland area. So the country's been divided into 6 climatic zones, and we call them energy zones now. So you need to know where the building is, occupancy, net floor area. And this net floor area is interesting because we've got a definition of net floor area in the regulations, well, in the standard, yet the private sector property group, they use a different definition for net floor area. And then you go into the heating, cooling, the technologies that are used, the percentages, the energy carriers, electricity, gas, maybe small scale embedded generation. Then you start looking at the end use lighting in the parking areas, outside lighting, ventilation, storage, fridges. And so you go through the data input sheet in order to be able to work out at the end what the performance of the building is, whether it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The certificate itself like this is not new to South Africans. We've been using a similar type certificate for standards and labeling of appliances for a couple of years now. It's very similar to the certificate that is used in EPC or almost, in Europe. In a couple of other countries, we have neighbors, and the US, they use different systems where they go more towards star rating as opposed to the A to G rating. But this is typically how the certificate looks. It has a reference to the standard and the regulation. It tells you what the consumption was. It tells you who done the accreditation, and it will then give you the rating. So how did we get to the ratings in South Africa? We have a national building standard in South Africa, as any country would have. And in the building standard, we have a section specifically on energy efficiency. This was developed quite a few years ago. It's referred to as SAN, South African National Standard 10400XA. It's the energy efficiency component of the building of regulations in South Africa. I can just mention the revision and the update of this particular standard was published for public comment on Friday. It is out for public comment. And so the figures that you see in this particular table will also have to be adapted to meet the new 10400 XA data. And just getting back to the data point, the original 10400 XA, because there was such a lack of data in South Africa, was modeled. So most of the information and the maximum energy consumption was developed using modeling and using Australian figures, because Australia is also a Southern Hemisphere country, similar climatic zones to South Africa, very similar in terms of occupation and so on. So a lot of it was done around using Australian work and then modeling. The 10400 now that went out for the revision on Friday has a lot more appropriate and applicable and local data to update the figures. So the four areas that are covered under the current regulations for EPCs is the description of the building or the classification of the building. You don't have to worry about the codes we use here, but it's basically entertainment and public assembly facilities, theatrical and indoor sports facilities, places of instruction. So that includes all our universities, schools, and other places of instruction, and then offices are the ones that are included. The climatic zones, as I said, you have the 6 climatic zones, and the maximum energy consumption, kilowatt hours per square meter per annum, are included in these tables. So if we just take, for example, a place of instruction in climatic zone 3, the maximum energy consumption that you should have there is 440 kilowatt hours. And if you were at 440 kilowatt hours, you would be D. That is sort of the benchmark rating in South Africa. If you were doing anything better, you would have a C, B, or A, and there's different parameters to get to C, to B, and A. If you were using more than that, you would then go to an E, F, or G. So that is very important. And EPCs have to be in South Africa now. It's only for existing buildings, not for new buildings right now, buildings that have been in operation for 2 years or longer, and which have not had a major renovation or change of occupancy within 2 years prior to the assessment period, and based on actual.
Seems like we are lost him.
Sorry, I lost you for a minute. Okay, we're back now again. So I just want to give you, I'll just wrap up because we are limited in time and running over time. That is the South African standard 1544, approved by our South African Bureau of Standards. It contains all the information in terms of the data requirements for an EPC. The basis is basically the energy performance of the building, measured annual net energy consumption, kilowatt hours per square meters per annum of the net floor area. And once again, the net floor area is then clearly defined what we determine. It excludes lifts and elevators and various other things, storerooms and so on. But I won't go into that in detail. All energy carriers have to be taken into consideration, not only electricity. 1 year's energy consumption from other recorded data, energy bills, or measurements. If the billing or the metering is not sufficient, you might need to install loggers and get information. As I said, the EPC is valid for 5 years from the date of issue in those particular occupancy classes. I don't want to go into detail in this, but just to give you an idea that the standard does make provision for unoccupied floor area. If you have a large building and only half of the building is occupied, how you go about calculating the unoccupied floor area and how you normalize it to make sure that you are representative and you're not getting a very good or very bad reading as a result of unoccupied floor area. So it's clearly defined in the standard and it tells you how to do that. And there's a lot of such buildings, especially now in the COVID situation, where certain occupancy classes are now working from home. The standard also makes provision for mixed occupancy. So if you had a shopping mall where you have banks and you have offices and you might have a place of education, a college or something in the shopping mall, how do you go about that? The shopping mall as a category is not included in EPCs now, but banking halls, for example, are included, and how you go about it. And primarily, it says any occupancy with a less than 10% of net floor area will be included in the dominant occupancy. So it would be part of the overall mall's occupancy, unless the energy consumption is greater than 10% of the total energy consumption. And that adds a bit of a proviso, because you do have, let's say, if you had a data center in a larger mixed occupancy, it might occupy less than 10% of the net floor area, but it would definitely use more than 10% of the total energy consumption of that facility. And then that data center would require an EPC. So it can get quite tricky, it can get a bit difficult, but that's why you have to read the regulations and the standard to be able to make provision for all these anomalies. The register itself is the repository that is, SANEDI has been mandated by the department to establish this register. We're busy working on that right now. This will eventually become a fantastic repository of all building data in South Africa. Not only the EPCs, there's an aspiration to include as many buildings as possible, even those that don't qualify or have to have an EPC, that we do end up with a very good system and a data repository of buildings in South Africa. It also helps and provides some transparency when selling or leasing properties, that people will be able to reference the register and actually see how the building is performing in terms of that life cycle cost that I actually showed you in the beginning. And as far as the Building Energy Performance Register is concerned, the data itself will be held and protected and is very confidential and will only be used internally for analysis and modeling, but the register itself, the front end, will be public. So anyone will be able to see who got what rating, what certificate. But the actual data, and of the 1st of July, in other words, Thursday, we have a new act coming into operation in South Africa. It's called the POPI Act, which is the Protection of Personal Information Act, very similar to new legislation in the EU and others about the protection of data, especially in this digital age that we're going in. And we are ensuring that this new data or this register will be compliant with the POPI Act going forward. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, EPCs, it's obviously an energy tool. It's a tool, as I mentioned up front, to visualize your energy performance in an easy to understand way, but it also provides a huge opportunity for job creation. We're talking about anything between 150 to 250,000 buildings that fall into those 4 categories that need to be done in the next 2 years. The sunset clause in the current regulation is the 7th of December 2022. So, you're not going to get 1 or 2 people being able to do between 150,000 and 250,000 buildings. We have to open up this sector to allow more people just going to do the measurements, doing the analysis, doing the data. So we see it as a huge job creation activity. There's an opportunity for training and skills development in technologies on end users, identifying energy efficiency opportunities for the energy service companies. We see it as stimulating technology adoption, for example, smart options, and we had the whole workshop last week on digitalization, ideal opportunity in building specifically for digitalization, and then making it easier where you can actually have a real-time EPC as opposed to one based on the previous year's data. And then ultimately, which is a national imperative leading up to COP26 in Glasgow in November, we see this as contributing to reduction in not only the energy consumption, but the greenhouse gas emissions. And that building register will be able to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions as well. So right now it's 4 classes of buildings, the inclusion of additional building categories and the tightening of the kilowatt hours per square meter in line with the revised building regulations will happen, and it still needs to be decided, but that is ongoing, and we see it as work in progress and something that will continue being developed over the years to come until we get to the situation that you have in Europe and other places where we even go right down to residential houses, which is quite typical in many countries for EPCs. But right now, we're starting baby steps, but we believe that this has got so much opportunity to increase and develop over time, and it will all be underwritten by good, accurate, accredited data. I thank you for the opportunity to share this with you, and we will answer questions at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. This was extremely interesting. And again, to highlight really how data played a role at the design phase, identifying where the potentials were in the buildings sector, and also all along the development of the policy by collecting data through these performance certificates and how they allow to really segment and focus and really detail and design specific policies and also to track them. So again, data is used all across the process. So thank you, Barry, for really these detailed insights. Moving now to my colleague Teslim Yusuf on the industrial side of things. Teslim, over to you if you want to put on presenting mode.
Okay. Is it on presentation mode now, Hugo?
I can see it.
We can see your
Okay.
presentation. Just yeah, just maybe we see the the speakers mode. If you can switch to presenter mode. Otherwise, we can go ahead. No worries.
Okay, I'll just go ahead. Thank you very much, Hugo, and thank you, Barry, for that extensive presentation. This is meant to be a joint presentation by myself and Mr. Luvuyo Giovanni from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Unfortunately, he cannot join us. On this, we will just be looking at very quickly the. Can you see the next slide?
Yes, perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. On this presentation, just like Mr. Mabusela has said, there are two very important aspects of the national strategy that we have looked at in this project. One of them is the National Energy Efficiency Strategy, the post-2015 strategy. And we've also looked at the EETMS, that's your Energy Efficiency Target Monitoring System that's developed by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And in the NEST, in this slide, I just give a quick overview of the NEST, and it tries to focus on the promotion of energy efficiency as the first fuel in driving the balance in social inclusiveness in the society. It also looks at supporting business and households and industrial associations in taking advantage of energy efficiency as an opportunity to reduce their energy intensity. And then lastly, we look at the energy efficiency policy measures that are expected to deliver economic-wide benefits, improvement post-2030. And then in my next slide, I try to show you the energy efficiency target monitoring system from 2015 to 2030. The key sectors, there are about 8 of them that have been looked at. We looked at the transport sector where there is they're trying to make a 20% reduction in vehicle energy intensity. And then you have the industry sector that concerns us, where we focus around 16% reduction in energy consumption. And we have the mining sector that's looking at 40 terajoules of energy being reduced in that sector. You have the residential sector, your commercial sector. In the industrial sector, we, as the Department of Energy and SENEDI, through a project funded by your Global Energy Fund and your United Nations Industrial Development Organization, we have a project focused around the pulp and paper industry and the automotive industry. We already know the automotive industry is quite advanced in its reduction of energy intensity, and the pulp and paper industry is quite intense in its use of energy. So those are the two sectors we're focusing on, and we're working with our partners in this space. We have the National Cleaner Production Center that sits within the CSIR. They have been in that sector, they've collected data. We're hoping to use some of that data as secondary data. And we're also hoping to hit the field and also collect primary data from companies. So we've already started consultation in that industrial sector. We've spoken with the industry associations, and we're already making some very good headway. But one of the things we did, and I'll talk about that later, let me just go to my next slide. When you look at the target monitoring system, the target monitoring system has been there since, it's working on a published mandatory regulation that came out in February 2012. And it allows for companies that exceed a threshold of 160 terajoules per annum of energy to register and report on their energy consumption. So we're going to have a lot of data collection in that space that supports policy development. And this indicators workshop is going to really help go a long way in supporting the officials of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy and SENEDI in understanding how to design policy in that space. And then we have your energy management plans that are also going to become mandatory, that companies that exceed 400 terajoules per annum must submit those energy management plans. So the target monitoring system is already up and running. In some areas, they've already started collecting data, like in your iron and steel your non-ferrous metals, your non-metallic minerals, and your chemicals. We still have a gap in pulp and paper and automotive, and a bit of gap in textiles and manufacturing. And lastly, on this slide, I just wanted to share what the South African Energy Industrial Energy Efficiency Project that is funded by UNIDO is quite extensive. It's been running for over a period of almost 10 years now. And we, as the Department of Energy and SENEDI, are focused around the first two components, where we looked at your data quality improvements. So it comes back again to data, and we're trying to use that data to facilitate rich industrial energy efficiency and energy management policy development in South Africa. And then secondly, we're looking at strengthening policy implementation and support your frameworks for your energy management systems and your energy system optimization. The other 4 components are jointly managed, but led by the NCPC, and SENEDI takes part in some of those areas. So that's just a quick overview of what the project entails, and you could see that it's going to be very data intensive. Over to you, Hugo.
Thank you, Teslim, and this was really great, very well explained. This is clear. Just to highlight the fact that the 2 sectors that you mentioned, pulp and paper and automotive, are extremely data complex. As we know, the pulp and paper has several and different products outputs. Therefore, having the key data to have the right indicators will require both to have access to the data, but also the skills to manage it. Again, highlighting the importance of these online courses. And thank you again for giving the overall perspective on how this fits, right? When you have national targets, it's important to decompose those national targets into really specific sectoral targets, as South Africa has just done, and tackling both energy intensive sectors such as the pulp and paper, but also the less energy intensive sectors such as the automotive will have many benefits, both in terms of climate impact, but also in terms of the multiple benefits of energy efficiency. As we know, the automotive industry has a large chain of suppliers and involves many different jobs and economic perspectives. And on that note, I would like to now hand it over to our colleague Tebe Mamakoko, Senior Energy Negotiator, that will touch on those different and additional benefits of a just transition and energy transition in South Africa. Mr. Mamakoko, if I can ask you to share your screen, let me know.
No, thank you very much.
Sorry.
I'm trying to share, but it says that somebody, I think Teslim, can you?
Apologies, bear with us. We'll try to.
Yes, thank you very much.
Are you able to share the screen? Otherwise, we can use the presenters that we have. Perfect.
I'm not sure if you can see my screen, colleagues.
Yes, we can. You can go on. Perfect. That's perfect, Tebe. Very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Hugo, and good morning, colleagues. I'm going to share with you the work that we are doing on the just energy transition within the broader framework of transition in the country. And I must thank you, thank the IEA for the opportunity to present this this work. I thought that maybe it will be very important to frame this within the context of how the country is approaching the issues of just energy, of just transition, but in particular the energy transition from the point of view of the production, which is or energy production that is mainly, as you know, hinged upon the vast amounts of coal that we have and which drives the economy, particularly in the area of Mpumalanga. And this might also, make it a bit of challenge in terms of how we transition from the current status quo. But I think the paradox is that the country has actually made its commitments through the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement that will contribute to the reduction of emission and transition to low carbon economy. And we also recognize that the transition are actually happening, and therefore South Africa cannot afford to be left behind. And this is premised within the policy context that the country has set from the National Development Plan. We also have the Integrated Resource Plan and the energy efficiency strategy that colleagues have spoken to, the carbon tax, and the now draft carbon climate change bill that is that will be serving at the cabinet. But we as a country have gone through the process of in support of those policy measures that I've indicated, and the decision that the country has made. Have gone through a process of engaging in the 9 provinces on the development of just transition framework as led by the then National Planning Commission, whose mandate has just lapsed last year in June, and which was followed by the establishment of the Climate Commission, Presidential Climate Commission, which has started its work early February to take forward that work around the framing of the just transition through the development of the 2050 net zero pathways. So we are working as a country or as a department to try and put together or bring together and manage this issue of energy transition as it's being done by various players in the country. You will appreciate that there are competing interests and possible trade-offs in terms of the policy choices, because there are people who are, interested parties who are driven by their constituencies, and they are doing all sorts of, activities around the transition. And the department is, as the lead in the sector, is responsible to dealing with that or to managing that. So we also have currently, in line with the implementation of the IRP, ESCOM having started a process to decommission the 4 of its power plant that are mainly situated in Mpumalanga, and hence I was saying that it might be a challenge or perhaps pose a challenge in terms of the quicker transition. But of course, we are forging ahead, and it's important for me to highlight that the message that is coming out from the consultation that we did as a department, but also that the National Planning Commission went through, the common message or underlying message was that the transition should happen within the context of the 3 pillars or the triple challenges that the country is facing, which is around unemployment, poverty, and inequality. So that is the frame within which we, as a country, we are dealing with this issue of just transition. Just to indicate how this issue is or how the transition is structured in the country, I've indicated that there are various parties that are playing a role. You have the the Presidential Climate Commission that is overseeing the overall just transition framework. But the department has recognized that it's very important that the planning around the just energy transition is well coordinated, and it can only happen through proper planning, collaboration, and cooperation, and learn from the principles of governance cooperation. And this process also will help us to distinguish between the broader frame of transition and the energy, and probably link its interdependence from the civil society, the business and labor, as well as other government institutions that are doing work in relation to just the transition. So we are basing our approach and which is in line with what the country has adopted on key pillars of energy transition, which is around sustainable development. Here we recognize that there has to be a balanced approach, or a new approach that takes into account the environmental, social, and economic aspects as conditioned by the recent economic environment. And also, the country has been clear in terms of the current policy framework that it has to ensure that it avoid external influences, but it provides for innovative technological solutions, and it provides for financial support, but most importantly that the transition should not be disruptive to both the energy system and also the economic system. And it does recognize the importance of the skills and capacity, the issues of gender and youth, and also ensuring that the transition is transparent, and there's also accountability, which I think is part of what informed us to, as we are developing this just energy transition framework, to look at those indicators that will respond to, or that will assist us in tracking the progress with respect to the implementation of those policies and measures that we have identified as a country. So we have looked at our situation, and I'm sorry, we have looked at our situation, and we decided on three key areas in terms of setting up the transition or energy transition indicators. So one of that is from the supply side, as we are implementing the IRP and other measures that the country has put in place. And the second is the transition indicators around the demand side. And here the energy efficiency targets or measures that are outlined in the National Energy Efficiency Strategy are regarded as key to measuring our progress and success in the energy transition. But also ultimately this will lead into the socio-economic pillars, as I indicated, around job skills, capacity, and other measures. So we, as a department, I think we need to appreciate that we are playing a sort of a catch-up game. As I indicated, there are processes that are unfolding, and we are still trying to put some building blocks. And as a result, the indicators that we have actually looked at from the suite of indicators that are out there were informed by our state of readiness. As indicated in the blocks above, that we still need to define a proper energy transition from the energy and mining side, but also have a well-informed energy transition targets. And this can only be done by establishing a fully fledged unit. Currently, we are holding the fort, but there are serious capacity issues that need to be taken into account, as well as the strengthening of the unit that will have to do this work, and ultimately, depending on the maturity of the process with respect to the implementation plan, we'll have to then do a reiteration of the identified indicators. So far from the supply chain, from the supply side, we are looking at indicators that will around the electricity affordability, a response to air pollution, carbon intensity, and emission reduction, but also looking at how effectively are we doing in terms of the energy mix as outlined in the IRP, in particular implementation of the renewables and other identified interventions. And we look at the demand side, the extent of the energy policy coverage, the affordability of electricity, and the rates, the energy intensity, and as I indicated, the targets that are being outlined in the needs, their effectiveness in assisting us to achieve that. And lastly, all of this should then talk to the issues around skills and balances around gender, social protection packages, but also the effectiveness of policy advocacy on just energy transition. So I had to rush through this, Hugo. I'm not sure, I was given some minutes, I was not timing myself. But in a nutshell, these are the, we are confined by, as I indicated, the level where we are in terms of the implementation of this energy transition. And we didn't want to overburden ourselves with many indicators just to appear, doing a lot of work and so forth. But we felt that this will provide a stepping stone in terms of what we can do in this space. So as we are concluding and taking this work forward, we'll be working with Sanedi through establishing a properly managed database on the just energy transition initiatives. But also we are further consulting on this work, and we are looking also forward to international collaboration, especially with yourselves, to further strengthen this work. We had a discussion with another team in IEA that has produced the 2050 net zero framework, and they were also quite keen in terms of working with us in taking this work forward. So we are looking forward to this, the collaboration and making sure that we put proper systems in place, mechanisms and so forth in terms of data collection, but most importantly, to be able to monitor and manage the implementation of the JET. Let me pause here for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tebe, for this wonderful presentation and having access to really the design of the key performance indicators and what data is envisioned at this design phase for the just energy transition. That was really key. And maybe something that you just mentioned that clearly makes the right transition is that for really partnerships to be created and for supporting bodies such as the IEA to really provide the required support to any partner that is engaging in this just transition, is the need for international standards in the data so that we all use the same methodology and maybe the same concepts so that we can really provide the adequate support and skills and training to make the required changes. So on that regional or international approach, I would like now to turn to our colleague from the African Bank of Development, to maybe share with us some of his insights on how data is key to really put in value energy efficiencies. Maybe Jalel, you want to turn your camera on so that people, the few ones that don't already know you across the continent might know who you are. Thank you,
okay. Thank you so much, Hugo. So I guess I have turned my camera on. I guess I hope you are seeing me well. Good. Thank you so much, and thank you for your invitation today. The energy efficiency indicators, it is one of the, in my opinion, it is one of the main things need to be done and developed across all the countries, not only around the world, but especially the countries where in the developing countries where they need really a huge support for developing and implementing energy efficiency project. So the first question that we will say, why do we need these indicators and what is the purpose? In fact, it is as any other project. They support us to gather the data needed to guide us to take the best decision, to develop best project, to design programs, to gather important key parameter to support the design and to set priorities for the different projects on the regional side, but also on the local needs to meet the local needs for each of the countries. But in fact, it is supporting the design of the project and the development, but also it's support us to see how much we are performing when we are implementing project or the after implementation of the project. It's just to give as indicators how we are doing. Are we improving? What is the level of this improvement? What are the performance for each of these programs and the project? They are, as said earlier, it is the KPI we need to have to assess our work and to understand where we are, and especially where we need to put more effort on that, where we need to invest to look for the best projects, programs, the ones that are more attractive to investors. And here, when I'm talking about investors, I'm talking about financing, about local financial institution, about the client also, because they are investing their money, but also third parties as ESCOs, energy providers, and so on. But also attractive equally to the end users, to the government, to the utilities, because each of them they have their own drivers to invest in energy efficiency. So they are not they do not have the same objectives. And this is really very important point that we need to take and to consider, that each of the investors or each program developer, they do have their own needs. So all programs design need to be considered this aspect to meet these end users or the stakeholders, especially when we are getting the data. So it's exactly the same when we are asking them to support or to give or to share the data. They were asking them also to invest in getting this data most of the time, and especially in the first, most of the end users, they do not have this culture of getting the data, of improving or setting where we are on assessing their performance. So we are asking them something most probably they do not have, so they will invest in that. But on the other side, we say we're asking them to invest what they will get in that return. It's really important. And we need to also not only getting this data, but also to get a good data, data with high accuracy, and because the information that we get, if we have a good and accurate information, that for sure we can have a good and accurate indicators to support us provide. So investing in the accuracy, it is one of the priorities that we need to ask for these stakeholders. How we can push them, if I can say it in another way, to give as precise, based on my experience with the other countries, we can push end user to report on their energy consumption, to report on their energy efficiency, to report even on their performance or implemented energy efficiency project. However, the most important is just reporting, but reporting with a good quality. And this is where potentially we do have some problems, even in the African countries, and you know also even on the international side, how to get to push these people to give us or to invest more in the accuracy. In fact, it's quite simple. Always I'm saying it's quite simple. If they are giving us a good information, we need to provide them also in return with a good set of information that to push them to invest more on the quality of that, by giving them some kind of reports to say where are or how they are performing comparing to their peers, based on the type of the energy they are using, based also on the potential savings, comparing to the other that they do have the same work, the same also product, and so on. We need to put ahead. So the return set of information need to push the end user to provide more detailed data and more precise one. If the end user looks for more precision, this needs to be linked to the quality of information they are providing. So that's why I believe that it's really quite important. Yes, gathering the data and put in place some tools, this is how, but also try to understand from their side what are they will get in return, which is really needed, because anyway we are doing that. I mean, why we are getting these energy indicators? In fact, most of the time to build the database, and in this database we can provide or we can create benchmarking tools that can serve as benchmarking tools, and this can bring more benefit for that, or this platform, if I can call it as data, can bring or get all the indicators that we can have it to give it back to these investors, because they are investing, as I said, in in having a good quality. So energy efficiency benchmarking tools or database could be developed easily in accordance with the survey or the data or the reported data that we get. That might include also analysis modules and resulted in expression of energy utilization indexes and benchmarks that they will serve for the end user or the general public according to their operational profiles and physical characteristics to assess their consumption performance in accordance with their energy and use systems and equipment as compared, as I said earlier, with other subjects in the same energy consumption group. So benchmarking tool provide a platform to user to benchmark their energy consumption and performance. So that's why I said with this way, they will provide the most precise information because they will not get also in return the best also indicators for them. It's not only to see where they are, but also to support them to estimate or to assess what is the potential of savings if they are doing much better or they are investing, because as you say, energy indicators is not just energy consumption per kilogram or per specific indicators, but also comparing to the others per type of energy and so on, so they can assess. So putting in place online benchmarking tools, this is one of the options. I think it's quite important. However, going back to the quality of the information, I said it's related to the cost. So if we want to have a good quality, we have to invest more and more, because the cost of the MNV or the report, or if we are looking more accuracy, we need to invest in more accurate system that might include the meters quality, the number of independent variables that we need to monitor, also the frequency of measurement, the frequency of reporting, the length also for the periods, and so on, the size of sample that we are doing. So there is a lot of information need to be there. So I just want to highlight here that the quality of the information, or the quality before the information of the measurement and verification, it's quite important, and we might need some support, especially for the end users to understand how and to get more precise data, because the data is not only about having the right tools. No, it's about having the right tools. It is the accuracy. It is also there is many options. What is the best way or the best option to measure, to have the right indicators based on the risk associated with each of the energy conservation measures. We have mentioned earlier, Hugo, that there is standards to make sure that we have right. Yes, the standards need to be there. We have we need to use there. But however, also from the other side, we have to understand what is the risk related to for each of the energy conservation measures, because for the same energy conservation measures from one sector to another, from one plant to another, maybe they do have the different level of risk, even if you are investing in the same. So it is important. There is a balance. I'll always will say there is a balance between the cost and the data need to be there. There is also the balance between how much the end user and the client wish to accept the level of risk, because you know that if you are investing in having more accurate data or information, we are investing also for having a good equipment, and what we are investing for this equipment, we are getting out from the savings. So there is always a balance need to be there. So just summarize a little bit, the measurement and verification, it should meet the needs also for each individual project and program, but there is some important principle, which is the accuracy, the transparency, and the repeatability that need to be always there. So as you said, yes, we need standards, that for sure, for measurement and verification for these indicators, but also we need also to understand what is the risk related for each of these indicators, which is, I think, important. So without the accurate information, we cannot really develop a good project. To have a good project, it's not only we need to design a good one or to implement a good one, but also we need to make sure that what we have designed, what we have implemented, they are performing really very well. And we need to monitor this performance and adjust, especially to make sure that we are achieving the expected results. We are not expecting that once we will implement the project will perform very well. No, we are in changing world, and we are in changing operation conditions and parameters. So we need to monitor all the time the achievement and to detect if there is any deviation from the expected saving or from the expected performance. So measurement and verification, it's really very important. The quality of the measurement performance is based on the quality of the related activities and how to measure. And this is 100% linked to the quality of the key indicators or the energy efficiency indicators that we are trying to gather and we are trying to have. So let's work together on having the best energy efficiency indicators, which is really important, because without them, we cannot go and make and provide and continue our work on having best or to improve the energy efficiency performance. And we, as the African Development Bank, we are trying to support the countries as much as we can on getting their indicators, or even sometimes say before even indicators, to support them to assess the energy options or the energy efficiency options and program that they can be implemented. And the performance or the measurement and verification of the energy efficiency indicators, it is one of the important part of each of the projects that we are investing to support the countries to be more performance on the energy efficiency side. Okay, so I'll stop here and give you back the floor, and I'll be glad to answer any of the questions the attendees may have.
Thank you, Jalil. This was very insightful, and just to highlight maybe two main ideas that I think are worth underlining is the fact that data not only is important for the ones who are collecting, but the ones who are also providing. This is what we have to keep in mind, that we have, in order to get engagement and support and compliance from the different bodies that we're collecting data from, to really show that there will be benefits from them by knowing how competitive they are, by knowing where they can stand, what the potentials are, what the savings that they could be making, the profits, and also so that showing that by sharing that they will also have access to it. This is something that is key, that I think we should advocate and remind every time that we're collecting data, that there will be something in return in terms of data. But most importantly, as you were saying, sometimes finance is key, and it's true that when money is involved, then comes risk. And with safe data that is based on international protocols and standards that are transparent, we can address those risks and really walk hand in hand with the different stakeholders in a transparent way and in a safe approach where everybody knows what we're doing. And if any change appears in this changing world, we can adapt because we are in agreement, and we have been involving all the stakeholders since the beginning, and the methodology is outlined and transparent. And on that note, I'll now ask all the panelists to maybe turn on their cameras for a panel discussion that will be chaired by Mel, and that will be picking your brains because we have so many great minds around the table. Over to you, Mel, now for a panel discussion with our colleagues.
Thank you, Hugo, and thank you for all those really insightful presentations. As Hugo said, anybody who can turn a camera on, I know it's not particularly easy for some people, please do, that would be great. If you'd like to speak or ask a question of another panelist, please do. You can either raise your hand or raise your Zoom hand, whichever is your preference. But I'm going to take the kind of prerogative of the chair to kick this off, of course, and just say for a start that really delighted to see from the very start with Khalile's presentation all the way through to the one that we've just had from Jalal, we've had this very consistent theme of the National Energy Efficiency Strategy, the need to have data to prioritize policies, then also track impacts, and as Jalal finishes off, round that package off with attracting investment. And it is really a holistic process, and it needs to be one system that supports all of those activities. So, you know, that was really, really clear throughout the presentations. So perhaps a first question to Barry. I was really pleased to hear how pragmatic you had been in taking data from another country when you didn't have your own, just to make a start. And I think that that's a really excellent idea. You know, and many countries just can't start. They won't start because they don't have the numbers. And you took the pragmatic approach of starting with something and then improving it. Can you say any more about how you think that worked out, how representative that was, whether you think it was a good plan in the end after you'd done it?
Yes, in hindsight, definitely it was the way to go, because it did make a start and did get people thinking. So with this new round, with the revised one that was put out, now it's going to be a lot more stringent. So we erred on the side of caution using foreign data. We had to, as I said, do quite a bit of modeling around that with a little bit of information we had in South Africa on the building regulations. But because it was untested, untried, we had to err on the side of caution. So what you found in the 10400XA, the first round, the targets were pretty lenient, quite easy to achieve. Now, over the last couple of years, we've been able to gather real data, South African data. You'll see the target set in the 10400XA revision is a lot more stringent. But I firmly believe that, you know, if one looks at demographics, one looks at climate, one looks at, you know, for example, basic things like Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere conditions, Australia has been used a lot, even with, I know with a lot of the Green Building Council tools as well. They use a lot of the neighbours system to develop the initial work and to kickstart the process and then to build on it. So yes, I don't, and that's what international collaboration is all about. I mean, even on the EPC stuff now as well, I failed to mention it, but I mean, a lot of the work in the development and going into the building register was, you know, coordinated by you guys, showing us best practices in other countries in Europe as well. So yeah, international collaboration, in my opinion, is the way to go.
Thanks, Barry. Maybe if I could go to Kalile. Kalile, you've got some good tools now for collecting data nationally through EPC, through 12L. Do you think, can you see a way we could use those, anonymized, of course, to feed into the indicators templates so that we can start to at least make a start to build indicators for certain sectors for South Africa, so that you know, if you see in Victor's presentation from our data center earlier, it would be just fantastic to have South Africa in that international comparison, even if it's you know, just taking the first steps, making a start. We know data will improve over time, but we all know that we don't improve until we start. So I just wonder if we could use those resources appropriately to start to build the South African indicators. Do you think that might work?
Yeah, yes, Mel, I think it will work, but it will need a little bit of some time and some resources. Remember, the 12L has a dedicated system within Saneti, and then I just think we just have to dig deeper in terms of that 12L data. In terms of the EPC, we're still formulating the systems, the processes, the guidelines. I think on the EPC one, I think it's a good starting point because I think almost around about 1 to 2 buildings, we have not even reached 10 buildings that are registered in the EPC. And also, if you look in terms of the industrial sectors, whether subsectors or broader sectors, I think there we also have to dig deeper. I think you'll be aware that we also have the National Cleaner Production Center of South Africa, which is hosted by CSIR. They have huge data. So I think in my view, yes, it will work. But I think between us, DMRE, yourselves as IEA and SANET, we just have to actually see how do we do it, because we have to dig deep and extract some relevant information, and maybe push the systems or the platform into some user type of a friendly type of a platform where we are easily extracting some of the data. But for the EPC, for the energy performance certification, and possibly some of the data that Tesla and Luvia are working for, I think it would be a starting point to actually shape how that data is collected or how that data is actually formatted in the platform that we actually have. Thanks, man.
Thank you for that. And I think, Jalal, that speaks to the points you were making at the end, where if we were to think about what investors need as well as what government needs, and maybe kind of try and envisage a framework so that when these new projects are being set up, they're actually established knowing that it would be beneficial to feed data into this portal, as you describe it, Kalile, or this online tool, as you referred to it, Jalal. If you know what that's going to look like and why, then it helps with you with the initial design of the projects. It doesn't work so well where you're in the position we are now, when we're trying to retro engineer data that's coming out of projects into a kind of portal. So, I mean, with your indulgence, maybe that's something that collectively the group of people here could look at what that might look like, and see if we can make some steps towards that. I had another question for Teslim. Your two sectors that you're looking at the moment, just for everybody's benefit, pulp and paper and automotive. How many companies are there in each of those sectors in South Africa? If you have the number to mind.
Well, thank you very much, Mil. I don't have that number offhand, but it's quite a large sector for the automotive, because the automotive sector also produces for export internationally. And for the pulp and paper, we have some major players, international major players that are locally based here in South Africa. But when you look at them, you have to look at them with the different value chains that they support. But I cannot give you those figures right now.
Okay. One of the reasons I was thinking about that was because traditionally the supply chain for automotive is very extensive. And that's one of the reasons it's an attractive industry to a country like South Africa, because it will be creating and maintaining a very large number of jobs. And there's been some really interesting supply chain initiatives around the world where the kind of parent company works with the suppliers on energy performance. So I wonder whether consideration's being given to that approach, because that's another way of making sure you have a good data framework. Because if there's an example would be if a major company is certified to ISO 14001, for example, they'll have to be making sure that their suppliers are also performing against certain criteria, and there's a data exchange that needs to happen there. So I'm just wondering whether there are other processes that are ongoing in South Africa that we might be able to plug into, so that we're not starting from scratch with all of this. Any thoughts on that, Teslim?
Yes, your Department of Trade and Industry and Competition already has what you call master plans for those two sectors.
Yeah.
So yes, we're working closely with those master plans to make sure that we do not reinvent the wheel. They're quite mature, and they give us sort of an indication of what is expected from those two sectors. And then that the value chain is also divided into tiers. So from your parts dealers to your process plants to your manufacturing plants, you have to look at them in very different ways. But one of the things that came out very clearly when we consulted the two industrial sectors was that you almost cannot match two plants together in benchmarking, especially in processes. They are quite unique. And so we're still trying to get our heads around how do you now, measure apples for apples when you look at two industrial plants in the same sector. but I'm very certain that we cannot match 2 plants anywhere in the world together.
Yes, and that's why we end up having to break processes down, unfortunately, and then build them back up, because each plant has a different combination of those individual processes. And of course, it's sometimes why we just pick a process. So, you know, it's an easy one but just as an example, when we talk about cement, you know, we take one of the elements, the clinker production, and look at that, because that's where a lot of the energy goes. And so we have to have a look at each of these sectors to see which processes are most important to us. Hugo.
Yes, sorry. So my hand was actually to highlight that in by order on how they appear on my screen. Tebe has raised his hand, and Angela.
Yeah. So let's go to Tebe.
No, thank you very much, Mel and Hugo. Mine maybe it's not a question per se, but it's a comment, as you have seen from our or from my presentation, that we're at the building steps, and we are looking forward to working with experts such as yourselves. I think we reached out to you at some point when we are starting this process. But it will be very important for me to understand you know, the type of assistance and help that the IEA, either from your section or from any other section that you know, deals with the issues around energy transition or just transition, in terms of you know, taking the work that we have started forward. I did indicate that we had to sift through a lot of indicators from, you know, the best international practice through literature review. But I think we still have an opportunity to, you know, strengthen that indicator process, so that we can be effective in our measurement of how best are we doing. And of course, I think that will be that will involve you know, some data collection, analysis, and so forth, which I think we'll start building with Barry. But it is going to be important to also understand to what extent you know, can we reach out to the IEA in assisting in this process. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. And I mean, the easiest starting point there, you know, one thing I worry a bit about is that we're already talking about kind of many layers and many platforms, and I think we have to come to one point and say we're going to have we need to design a platform for indicators that serves multiple purposes, because then the investment in the data collection is you know, really worthwhile, because it's put to several different uses, rather than have, you know, start a new process for the JET. And a lot of what you said in the indicators you need on supply and demand, they're the same things that we need to build, you know, the overall to make sure South Africa's energy balance is good and up to date, and also to make sure we have good demand level data by sector. So let's keep these things together, and you know, we're very, very happy to support that. But it would be also good to talk to Jalal about how much he and his team could also support this process, so that collectively, you know, we can put probably a major effort, but to building a multi-purpose tool for South Africa. One other thing, and yes, we're here to help, and you know, we need to talk about what help is needed and where it's needed to decide how best we can contribute, but there will be others, of course, too. The one area of major research that we are starting that's kind of different to what we've already been talking about is the analytics on jobs, and that's kind of a big project that we're looking at, because, you know, we've been publishing numbers on job creation, but we all know that we need to get better at how those indicators are developed and managed. So yes, there's help, Terry, but I'd like to make sure it's seen in a holistic way, in one place. Jalal.
Thank you, Mel. Well, I just want to highlight another point, which is, I think it's really important. Getting the data, yes. Getting all these details or asking more the details, yes. But the more we are asking as details, the more also we have to make sure that we are concerned about the confidentiality of this. So having the trust or building the trust between us, let's say, since I consider that we are getting all the information and the end user, this is quite important, especially in sectors or very sensitive sectors. So we are asking them to provide us details information that we need to make sure that we are providing confidentiality for that. We are not jeopardizing any potential problems for the sectors or for the clients, especially not on the international side, but sometimes also within the same countries, that some sectors, especially when we are talking about the industries, they don't want to expose all their specific energy consumption per operation or per department and so on. And this is make it a little bit difficult. So we have to think about how we can secure this information, and we will not share it unless we will have, if I can call it, balance between what we can get and what we can provide. So this is really a very important point that we need to consider when we are putting information available, as I said earlier, on the online, for example, where everyone can get information, can access their. So we have to consider this without names. That for sure. Don't usually we say we don't recommend that we put names. We don't recommend that, but only systems. And this is really very important, because even sometimes without names, just putting system, we can figure out which are the companies they are working in the same field and what really we intend. But however, I think it's important to consider this and to make sure that we are not exposing the data to general use or to bring potential problems, especially for the end user. So this is one of the one that I would like to highlight, especially when we are going and asking more, because we need to secure this security, to provide this security and build this trust between us to get this data and the end user.
Great. Thank you. Very good point. Very important point. It's one of the reasons I was asking Teslim about the number of companies, because I used to work on industrial benchmarking in the UK many, many years ago, and we used to have trouble with sectors where we didn't have many plants. So most sectors, when there were, you know, say more than 10 plants, say, then it was okay. Nobody minded if we published anonymized benchmarking data. But if there were only 2 or 3, even anonymizing it wasn't good enough, because people could work out who those companies were. You know, you didn't have to put a flag on it saying this was British Steel. You know, everybody knew it had to be British Steel. So that's why choosing sectors, at least for the early pilots, which have, you know, multiple companies, is useful. It's more complicated in a way, because you've got more companies to approach. But if you want to actually take a tool-based analytical approach, then it's really handy to have multiple companies. And you also get more of a representation of different processes, which then allows potentially an indicator to be more comparable with other similar markets. If you haven't just got, you know, there's some places that just run one process in a country, for example, and that then is, you know, it's good for that individual process, but it's not so good to compare, like you say, apples and pears in other parts of the world. Teslim.
Yes, Mel, we're not going to have that kind of a problem here. The sectors are quite large. We have a lot of players in that space. in the automotive sector, we already have the international players here locally with production lines. Pulp and paper, we have some international players as well. And the NCPC and through the CSIR, collecting data in that space, I've always made sure that data is aggregated on the level that you cannot get to company specifics. And we hope to follow that same model as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I would just caveat too, though, I worked in Australia, as many of you know, before I came to the IEA. And because this confidentiality issue was so sensitive, there was actually ended up being this perverse effect in that each individual piece of policy that was developed, the data was tied up so much that it couldn't even be shared within the government, and it couldn't be used for this type of process. So there are degrees of management of the data that need to be considered, but not just tying it up so tightly that it can't be used for any policy analysis, because that's then obviously a really wasted opportunity. Okay, we need to, there are no more hands at the moment. I can't see any, Hugo. So we need to sort of draw this to an end so that I can pass back to Hugo. But thank you for those comments. I'd just like for me to say, we're really keen to work with you all on progressing this idea of having much better data that can be analysed, that can be shared in an anonymised form to prioritise policy implementation, see how we're tracking against the targets in the NICE, and also, attract investors. So thanks all for today and for your open collaboration. Hugo.
Thank you, Mel. And now, before we close the event, my colleague Mathieu will give an overview of the online courses and the many reasons why we encourage our colleagues to take it. Over to you, Mathieu.
Thank you, Hugo. So hi, everyone. I'm Mathieu Prien. I'm the program coordinator of the Energy Efficiency in Emerging Economies program. So if I could have the next slide, please. So in the past 2 years, the IEA has been launching and expanding its online training offer with all of its English online training courses on one platform, our e-learning platform, which currently has 4 online courses. So you've got the 2 courses on energy efficiency indicators, which I will talk to you about now. And we've also got 1 major course on energy efficiency in buildings, which we highly recommend you look into as well. It's a 40-hour course that we just uploaded on our online platform a month ago. And then we've got 1 course on sustainable energy policies for smart cities. Next slide. Next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide, please?
We might be facing issues. I'll try to solve it.
Technical issues.
Mathieu, maybe you could just carry on with what you were going to say anyway.
So we've got 2 courses on energy efficiency indicators. We've got 1 on fundamentals and statistics, and the other one is on essentials for policymaking. So the 2 courses are available in several languages other than English. And they are both adapted from our 2 IEA energy efficiency indicators manual that were published in 2014. I think Victor mentioned that earlier. So the e-learning course on fundamentals and statistics is primarily aimed at energy statisticians and analysts. And the other course on essentials for policymaking is geared primarily toward high and mid-level policymakers, experts and statistical officers. So as energy efficiency is across getting top issue, officers from different government agencies may benefit from this training. So not only from the Minister of Energy, but also the Ministries of Economy, Industry, Infrastructure, Transport, Building and Construction. And you'll see in a minute that the course covers energy efficiency for different sectors. So a variety of government agencies will be concerned. So next slide, please. So in terms of what the course covers, The first module looks at why indicators, a methodological framework. So as Victor mentioned earlier, in these modules, you'll get to know about key concepts, the IEA methodological framework for identifying and developing disaggregated energy efficiency indicators for effective policies, and it looks also at data collection methods. And then you've got 4 different modules that are looking at 4 different sectors: residential, services, industry, and transport. And in each one of those, you'll find out about, you'll have an overview of energy consumption in each of these sectors. It looks at relevant energy efficiency indicators for each sector, approaches to data collection, interpretation, and dissemination. Next slide, please. So after completing the course, after completing the course in statistics, participants will be able to identify the sets of indicators that can be developed across sectors, as well as the data required to do so. They'll be able to kind of clarify the role of detailed data collection for effective energy efficiency indicators and policy. They'll be able to explain the process of formulating disaggregated energy efficiency indicators, and that is applying the IEA methodology. And they'll be able to define available approaches for energy efficiency surveying, metering, and modeling in each sector covered by the modules that I just mentioned. And for the course for policymakers, they'll be able to explain the importance of data for effective energy efficiency policies. At the end of the course, they'll be able to discuss the role of those indicators for prioritizing sector-specific energy efficiency policies. And they'll be able to identify suitable energy efficiency policies in key sectors based on available data and indicators. So the format of the course, next slide, please. So it's based on the MOOC model. So it's a free, it's open and massive online course. Once you've registered, it's available 24/7. So you can take as long as you want to complete the course. It takes 10 hours, but approximately, we say it takes approximately 2 to 4 weeks, but some people can do it in 1 week. It's got, in terms of content, it's got videos, it's got readings, it's got slides. You've got discussion fora in which you can reflect on your own experience, and there is 1 evaluation per module. What's very important is that there's also IEA Energy Efficiency Policy in Emerging Economies LinkedIn group. And this group, which you can register to, which you can join when doing this course, can be used for you to ask questions to instructors. And this is also an opportunity for you to join a community of IEA alumni. All the people who've taken IEA trainings in the past, who've done the course, many of them are joining this LinkedIn group, and we use it to announce some webinars, to get your input on some specific pieces of research we're working on. And this is an opportunity for you to ask questions live while you're taking this course. And finally, we've also got a help desk. So if you've got any technical issues, it takes us usually 24 to 48 hours to get back to you on weekdays if you've got any issues. And to complete the course, participants will need to pass all 5 module assessment tests with a minimum score of 70%. Participants who successfully complete the course will receive an IEA certificate, which can be linked to their LinkedIn profile. So that's it. So next slide, please. So we really hope you'll enjoy taking these courses, which we're very proud of, and which are available to you all freely on our e-learning platform, and the link is on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mathieu, for this, and sorry for the technical issues. Now we have reached the end of our workshop for the launch of this Indicators online course. Maybe Mel, you want to make some last remarks before we close, and otherwise I just wanted to remind everyone that we'll be organizing in 2 weeks from now a second workshop for the participants to make any questions, raise any issues that they have been facing with the course or with data or any project that they want to share with us. It will be the opportunity for us to really target sectoral indicators and benchmarking. As mentioned by my colleague Teslim, we will be working on pulp and paper and the automotive industry, but overall keeping this momentum during this really important phase that the world is facing with the transition, with the recovery or phase of the pandemic, where we can change, but also we need to track our progress. Maybe Mary, if you want to make final remarks before we close.
Just to say thank you again. And thank you, Hugo, for organizing us.
Well, thank you to all the colleagues for joining and for your time and really the inputs. Again, I encourage all the participants to take this course. The key aspect that it has is that it gathers the best practices that the IEA really uses, that has been used in different parts of the world. As mentioned, it will be key to have a common approach, standards, and also the indicators, of course, so that we can share help or support at any point during these future projects that we are starting on. So on that, thank you all. The presentations will be available and the recording as well. We'll be sharing the links soon. Thank you again. And if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much, Hugo and everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.